Hello and welcome to James's Soapbox. Today I'm going to talk about an article that caught my attention a couple of weeks ago. It's an article on politics.co.uk, a political comment website basically, and it's this opinion article which says genes didn't make us liberal, Kant did. And it starts off with a little preamble about some survey about liberal views or whatever. And then it starts attacking what it sees as moral relativism in liberalism. And basically says that liberalism is a universal ideology, as it is, and that those who seem to reject the universal nature of it are wrong, and that by being relativists rather than absolutists, then that can lead them into endorsing all sorts of things. It says, uses an example of they say apparently these people that they basically say about Iraq and Middle Eastern countries that they don't want democracy, and people shouldn't force democracy on the Middle East, for example. Now, I'm going to attack now the article, basically, the basic idea behind the article. Basically, I will make the distinction between universal liberalism and the actual implementation of liberalism in political systems. Basically, what I argue is that, yes, liberalism is an absolutely universal ideology, and it has to be to work, basically, like quite a lot of big political ideologies of universalist. But historically, the development of liberal political systems have not been ones of it being imposed, like America and Britain and the West basically attempts to do in the Middle East through either funding coups or attacking nations, basically like Iraq and revolutions in Iran, previous revolutions, obviously not the most recent one, the Iranian Revolution of the 70s, and that you've got to realise this distinction if you want liberalism to spread. Basically what I argue is that as far as imposing liberalism goes, it's never really worked. Only in a few countries back after the Second World War, really, Japan and Germany, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Italy, for example, Axis power had a long history of liberal government, so that was just a case of reverting back to that. I think that, yes, you can still maintain that liberalism is universal while realising that if you want other countries to adopt it, then you've got to let them do it by themselves, slowly, not tell them to rush into it when they're not ready. That's why Britain, France and things are good examples of liberal political systems, because their political systems developed over a long period of time. And obviously America, it didn't develop over a long period of time, but it drew from the liberal views of the colonists who were from Britain and France and the various other liberal Western European imperial powers. So what the neocons don't seem to realise is they've got to let these countries develop it by themselves because they want to, not impose it on them, because by imposing it, it will just make people hate liberalism, turn people against it, and that's what has happened in the Middle East. Liberalism has now become associated with America. America's tried to force it on them, and that has made them hate democracy because it's seen as an American thing, whereas if they leave them alone, then democracy might eventually, liberal democracy, take hold. Just like in Iran, quite a lot of people maintain, and in fact I think recently The Economist, I think it was, mentioned this on an advertising campaign. One view of the potential war with Iran, that America, we think, might be thinking of, certainly the neocons want it, that, if they leave it alone, then eventually Iran may develop democracy. I mean, due to the Shah before the Iranian Revolution, quite a lot of Iranian society is actually fairly liberal. It's just that there was a bit of a counter-revolution. But I think you could argue that if America didn't attack Iran, then eventually this liberal base will eventually expand and eventually form a great liberal democracy. I mean, Britain is often hailed as a great example of liberal democracy, yet it wasn't truly completely liberal democratic until after the Second World War, when all women were enfranchised. And enfranchisement had been a long historical process, and even before quite a lot of people were enfranchised, Britain already had a long liberal tradition which had fostered the liberal democratic ideals, which was the basis then for a stable liberal democracy, whereas the Middle East doesn't have that yet, but we have to give them a chance to develop it. Thank you again for watching James's Soapbox, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.